Yeah, we collect data that's publicly available, such as the cost of childcare. We look at kind of who is served in the community through childcare. So we work with Workforce Solutions. We work with our local childcare providers and collect data on how many kids are served each year. We look at data at the quality and how many kids are served in quality childcare settings, in home settings, in licensed childcare settings. Yeah.
Would you say right now there's a need for more providers?
There's absolutely a need for more providers.
Okay.
We saw a huge shift during COVID with childcare closing. They have reopened quite a bit, but there's always been a huge need for childcare. We do not have enough providers for the number of children in Travis County.
So the data supports the need, right?
Data supports the need, absolutely.
Can you kind of talk about what you've seen in the data that would suggest that there is such a need?
Yeah, we know. So even just for children under the age of 6, there are around 24,000 children who are below the 200% of poverty. And so those are parents who cannot necessarily afford childcare. And through childcare subsidies, there are only around 3,000 slots available for all ages at any given time. And so yes, we know that not everybody is working, but about 60% of all families do have a parent in the workforce. And so that is a huge gap that we're seeing right there, right? When we think about what slots are available through childcare subsidies and who actually would need childcare throughout the day. And so that gap has been present for many, many, many years. And it doesn't, we also know that even with childcare subsidies, and when we look at pre-K, so we know we have public pre-K for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, those, we don't have enough slots for those for children to attend either. So it's kind of across the gamut where we are missing slots.
Yeah, and do you have any data on the providers' lacks, like staffing-wise, or kind of what they're able to provide?
Unfortunately, we don't have anything locally. I know there was a survey done Texas-wide by the National Association for the Education of Young Children that looked at kind of staffing, and it was 51% of Texas providers indicated that they were having a hard time recruiting and maintaining staff and were under-enrolled because of that. We locally haven't had data since COVID, so since about 2021, to kind of, and that pattern was the same at the same time, that we had around 60% of providers at that time that were understaffed because they did not have the providers to provide the care.
Okay, so overall, huge gaps that need filling.
Correct.
What would you say is being done to help kind of fill those gaps?
I think that, you know, the city and the county have put a lot of their local dollars and their ARPA dollars, so that they've gotten from the state and from their national funding sources into providing more care and providing actually additional dollars for slots. Texas Workforce Commission has added slots, but a lot of those funding mechanisms are ending at the end of this year, or already have ended. So we anticipate those gaps staying the same or growing because some of those national funding sources are going away. We know that, locally we do have the city and county invested quite heavily in early childhood. We have philanthropy invested in early childhood, but still not enough to fill those gaps, and childcare is expensive, especially if we're thinking about high quality childcare, and that's what we really know makes a difference, for brain development, for children's development, for them to be on track when they enter school. We also know it makes a difference for parents, right? If you know that your child is safe and happy and looked after, you feel comfortable going to work and leaving your child with somebody. So there is that local investment, but it's still not enough.
And so speaking to that local investment that you mentioned, the parts that they're expiring, like mostly ARPA, I would imagine.
Correct, yeah, it's mostly ARPA.
How was that money used? Like you said, it created extra slots. How did they do that? And then so I'm thinking in my head, like, what would be leaving? What would be expiring specifically?
Yeah, so there were lots of different pieces to that, but I know that there were additional dollars just for slots, so more families could be served on a daily basis. So that will be automatically decreased. We had a funding source. We do have a funding source right now that we call Jeanette Watson, and Workforce Solution administers that, and it's basically some wage supplements for our caregivers who provide care for our most vulnerable children. And it's hoping to get a little bit at that pay parity to match what our public pre-K teachers are making, which is significantly more than some of our childcare providers, even though they're both, providing a really valuable service. So we had additional dollars to invest in our teachers because, they are not making enough for the hard work that they're doing, and that it's why retention can be hard. And so that was one of the way it was invested, to provide a little bit more incentive money for teachers to stay and be part of those childcare centers. Trying to think what else. We had some dollars that were invested in non-traditional childcare. It was more of a pilot just to see, because we know there's such, in addition to the gap for regular childcare, there's a huge gap for non-traditional childcare. So when we think about non-traditional hours, we're talking kind of prior to 7 a.m. and after 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. And we know that many jobs that aren't your typical 9-to-5 jobs, so thinking about our nurses, thinking about hospitality workers, thinking about our construction workers, they don't work typical jobs, right? And so most childcare centers don't open early or stay late, and so they have challenges getting their children to childcare and getting to maintaining jobs and getting to their job sites on time, or they have to figure out some alternatives in between. And so we did a pilot to say, okay, if we offer incentives to childcare providers and to the teachers to work extra hours, what would that take? And so we did invest in pilots that were really successful to show that the need is there. Providers want to do that. Parents are using it if we offer it. Unfortunately, there hasn't been ongoing money to keep that up, but that was a way that we kind of wanted to show, if we have the money, it is a need in our community.
ARPA funds that are expiring at the end of this year, but they went towards essentially expanding slots, and also things like the Jeanette Watson
wage
but
supplements.
I know that Jeanette Watson was around before the pandemic, and it's
Correct.
going to be around afterwards.
Correct.
That's not going away.
It's not going. It's just less money.
Correct. Okay.
So we were able to serve more teachers, so there'll be fewer teachers that we can serve.
Okay.
And then there was also investments in some work going around with home-based providers and trying to make sure that they have what they need. That ARPA dollars went towards that, to really make sure that home-based providers who don't have the same support as centers can get into the licensing, help with paperwork to get licensed. We also invested money in pre-K partnerships, which Madison can talk more about, which really helps draw down state funds for pre-K so that centers have more funding to provide high quality care. So there's some money that went into that too that will be going away at the end of the year, which again helps stabilize and provide more funding for our child care centers. As well as shared services, yes.
Okay. Do you know if do you foresee any plans to help supplement when everything disappears at the end of the year, or is that kind of still a work in progress?
I think that's still a work in progress, where, we are the administrators of shared services and pre-K partnerships, and we are trying to find philanthropic dollars and various other funding sources to try to kind of close that gap. But I know that for other investments, like the extra Jeanette Watson funding, that probably won't get backfilled. So that will just go away.
Yeah. Would you say that it was better that you had it, even though you're going to be losing it, or would it have been better to not have it at all?
Oh no, it's absolutely better to have it. It gives us data and information, right, to show that there is a need, and if you provide it, it will be used effectively. We have data to show that this is how many kids benefited, this is how many families benefited from these services. And families were experiencing a lot of need during COVID, right? Parents were losing jobs, they were unable to work the same amount of hours, so having childcare available and more slots available when they had to work different hours or multiple jobs was really helpful.
Okay, and then is it your hope and effort and goal to, like you mentioned, fill that gap once these dollars expire?
I mean, I think it is the community's hope that for a lot of these services, we want to be able to grow them. We want to be able to meet the demand for childcare so that families can find high quality, affordable childcare in Travis County so that they can go to work and be part of the workforce.
Why is that important?
I mean, there's two reasons it's important, right? I mean, when we think about the child and the family, we know that high quality childcare is really important for child development, for their brain development, for them to be happy and successful later in life, to be on track developmentally, to enter school ready, to read on grade level by age 3, to graduate from high school. It's kind of being on that trajectory is all influenced by kind of those early years. From a workforce, aspect, we know that by not being able to enter the workforce, the community is losing out on a really high-skilled, potentially workforce that is not able to join because they have to stay home taking care of their children. And so the community would be stronger if we are able to provide that childcare.
How big of an impact do you think that wage stipend makes?
Yeah, I think it's still something that we are constantly digging into. I think it also depends, the stipend kind of differs based on their education level. And so some might not be getting a huge amount, but for some it is over $3,000 a year, which can be a significant amount when you're trying to make your rent, when you're trying to get groceries. And it's really, it kind of supplements, because a lot of these providers are making $13, $14, $15 an hour, sometimes a little bit more, but that's not a whole lot when we're thinking about a working wage in Travis County, when we think about the huge rising costs in food prices, in wage prices, in rent prices, in housing prices that have all gone up significantly in the last 5 years. And so having those extra supplements is really helpful. And it's, with childcare, if providers want to pay their teachers more, their only really option is to increase tuition, which means that parents would have to pay more. And the average cost of infant care is already on par or more than a semester at UT. And you haven't had 18 years to save for that, right? And so the more we want to, it's kind of that balance that providers want to keep costs low, but we still need to be able to pay teachers a living wage that also retains them, right? We know that when teachers are paid well, that they feel valued and they're more likely to stay in their positions rather than having that constant turnover, which we know constant turnover is also not great for child development. Children want that consistent caregiver throughout the year.